Welcome back to another episode of the Ag Carbon Podcast from the Ugaro Carbon Alliance. I'm your host, Chris Daly. Hey folks, today I'm joined by Pacific Northwest-based agricultural carbon experts Mitch Wayment and Jake Tilden Browning, and we are chatting about how producers in the Pacific Northwest can get involved in the ag carbon market. Welcome Mitch and welcome Jake. Glad to have you on today.
Thanks for having us, Chris.
Tell me about yourselves.
Yep. So, Mitch Wayment here. Live in Southeast Idaho with my wife and baby girl. I grew up farming from the Burley, Oakley area in southern Idaho. My family are dairymen. They also grow potatoes and sugar beets. And then my wife, she came from a family farm as well. Orchard farmers down in Utah.
I'm Jake Tilden Browning. I'm a regional sales manager for Agoro Carbon, covering the western U.S. So I'm based in Western Oregon, and I joined Agoro Carbon about 2.5 years ago. Previously, I was in the agricultural chemical fertilizer and seed business for about 14 years. Worked as a crop advisor as well as a branch manager. Kind of fell in love with production agriculture actually while I was in college. Used to work on a grass seed farm in the Willamette Valley, and that drove my interest in agriculture. Got a degree in crop and soil science from Oregon State, and then went on into the ag chemical business. But been in the Willamette Valley my whole life. Worked with a wide range of crops, everything from hazelnuts, grass seed, nursery stock, berries, and now I get to help producers on their carbon credit journey every day. So it's pretty awesome.
Great. So first, I want to start off by asking you, Jake, besides having the nation's finest wine and hops, what makes the region unique? What are some questions you get as an agronomist in Oregon and Washington that, let's say, an agronomist wouldn't get in Texas?
Well, I think what makes this region unique is, the diversity of the cropping system that we're dealing with. I mean, a producer in our area might run cattle or sheep, but they also may farm, and they could be farming 10 different crops, as part of their operation. So common questions we get are, how can we make this program best fit their operation? And that's one of the beautiful things about the Agoro Carbon program is that it can be very flexible for the producer. We have to look at oftentimes diverse crop rotations and, animal characteristics and figure out how we can best tailor this program to the producer. So that's essentially what Mitch and I do every day is figure out how this can work best for them.
Mitch, could you describe the terrain for somebody who may not be familiar with Washington, Oregon, or Idaho, or as we're calling it, the Pacific Northwest?
Yeah. So the terrain, when a lot of people think of the Pacific Northwest, maybe they think of pine trees and lush green fields. It's quite the opposite where we're at. We're in the high desert of the Pacific Northwest, so a lot of sagebrush. Not a lot of rainfall, about 8 to 12 inches a year, depending on where you're at. The Snake River runs from the eastern side of Idaho across the southern half and then up to Oregon there and empties out into the Columbia River. For the most part, the eastern sides of Washington and Oregon look a lot of the same. As far as Idaho, a lot of sagebrush and high desert.
I got to tell you, I had the privilege of going to the Pacific Northwest for the first time a couple of years ago with Agoro. And coming from the East Coast, a New Haven kid, I was very surprised. I went to the Tri-Cities area, and that was my first taste of the Pacific Northwest. And like you said, like a lot of folks, I expected a lot of big old trees and oceans and whales and such. But when I landed in the Tri-Cities area, what was around me there besides the river going through that you just described? What sort of crops did I see?
Well, when you get up on the Columbia Plateau there, I mean, you're going to see a lot of wheat, a lot of potatoes, things of that nature. As Mitch indicated, it's kind of the high desert, which is a stark contrast to, you go west of the Cascade Range and you get into the more lush, Willamette Valley type atmosphere, which is where I live. You go from an 8 to 12 inch rainfall zone to, a 40-inch rainfall zone. So I think that makes Pacific Northwest pretty unique in that, we have both the coastal production as well as the high desert. So you drive from one end of the state to the other, you're going to see two different worlds.
That's really something. So sounds like there's a whole lot of diversity of land here. all sorts of different types of farming and ranching operations. Which leads me to, I'm sure you're asked this a whole lot, the both of you. What type of land is eligible for the Agoro Carbon program?
Pretty much any ground's eligible as far as this private ground. So part of our methodology with the program, we do go out and soil sample to verify carbon buildup. So with that, if ground is super rocky or terrain is fairly rough, we would cut that ground out. But for the most part, any mellow type farm ground or pasture ground we can enroll, as long as it doesn't have, again, the rough terrain or a lot of tree cover.
Okay. So if, let's say a farmer has some of what you just described, but a lot of the other land is nothing like you described. It's a little more rocky. It's a little more, you know, non-irrigable. Are producers required to enroll their entire operation into the program, or can they sort of pick and choose what fields they want in?
The great thing is about our program, we only require 500 acres to enroll. So, producer doesn't have to enroll their entire operation. Oftentimes, what we do is we'll look at their operation before they sign up and figure out what areas would benefit them the most from enrolling. Whether that be all farmland, pasture land, or a combination of both. We can kind of help them figure out where they're going to see the most benefit from enrolling in a carbon program and enroll those specific acres, as long as they have that 500 acre minimum.
Can you tell me why do producers have to enroll their land for the amount of time? How long do they have to enroll their land for, first off? And is there any rationale behind it? I heard you mentioned a methodology. I heard you mention, some parameters behind an eligible land. Could you walk me through some of these parameters?
Yeah, so our carbon project lasts for 10 years, and the reasoning behind that's twofold. For one, carbon takes a while to build up in the soil. So, we need to have a 10-year project so we can really look at the true benefits of their practice changes that they're doing over a long period of time and capture that within our soil samples. The other thing is, the registry that we use for our carbon projects requires that we help producers make practice changes for the long term. The fancy word for that is permanence, and the way that we, make sure that they've made long-term practice changes with permanence is by having a 10-year project.
What are some of these practice changes you're chatting about here? Specifically, can you chat about some that you'd see more predominantly in the Pacific Northwest and in both your regions here?
Yeah, so farm ground practices. I mean, you're looking at tillage management, so minimize tillage, moving towards no-till as an option as well, along with cover cropping. On the pasture side, wide range of practices, and we encourage producers to reach out to learn more about those practices that they could adopt to help out their operation.
Great. So during this 10-year program, with some of the restrictions and some of the practice types that you've mentioned, are producers still able to use their land for farming and ranching while enrolled in this program?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, our goal is not to hinder farmers and ranchers from utilizing their land. Quite the contrary. We want to help them make improvements to their land that they're going to benefit from, even after the carbon project is completed. So, whether that be as part of the row crop or the range and pasture program, we definitely want them to continue on with farming and ranching, and then hopefully, improve their operation for future generations as being, involved within this program.
Great. So y'all may be biased here, but would you say there's more of an opportunity in the Pacific Northwest?
All biasm aside, I certainly believe so. There is a lot of progressive minds out in the Pacific Northwest, and there's always producers wondering, what can I do more to better my operation?
What are some of the inputs to that? Can I ask you, Mitch? Like, why do folks approach you asking about the program, and when they sign the contract and when they get going, why do they do what they're doing?
It seems like there's a gravitational push towards soil health and conservation. I see that across the board. More and more farmers, especially, are interested in looking at, how can I improve my soil health or soil structure, organic matter, things like that. And then, input costs are only getting higher. The disparity between, let's say, a chemical company and a fertilizer company, and what a producer makes on a per acre basis is only growing larger. So guys are certainly looking at how do I cut input costs and then preserve the ground that I have to pass it on to my kids.
Could you tell me a little more about who Agora Carbon is? Is this a government program or is this a private program? And have any recent new federal policies impacted the Agora Carbon program?
So Agoro is not a government program. Agoro is a private company based in the United States. And essentially, we're a carbon project developer. So, what that means is we work with farmers and ranchers to develop a carbon project for their operation, the goal of which is to help them make improvements to the land and, help them adopt regenerative practices while also sequestering carbon along the way. So, not only are they going to benefit from the improved practices, the improved land, soil health, those kind of things, but we also help them monetize the carbon that they build in their soil over time so they can also benefit from the sale of those carbon credits as well. And in terms of the question around government, the beauty of the agrocarbon program, we're involved in what's called the voluntary carbon market. So there's a regulated side and a voluntary side. The voluntary side was created by big companies that are looking to voluntarily offset their carbon footprint. So it's created a marketplace or an opportunity for farmers and ranchers to make more revenue by selling the carbon in their soil, as a carbon offset to these companies voluntarily. So the beauty of that is, a change in the administration or new government policies don't impact our program whatsoever, being as it's completely voluntary.
Fascinating, fascinating. Thank you very much for that, Jake. Now, I've been asking you folks nonstop questions since we started here. Got one more for you, and it's a loaded one. What other questions do you get asked a lot in your region that are maybe a little more region specific?
I would say, like on regarding farm ground side, how do I implement and adopt these practices? How can I adopt minimum till? What does that look like? What equipment do I need to buy? Especially moving towards no-till. Is there anyone else doing this? What's their experiences like? Um, but yeah, I'd say those are pretty common questions I get.
Do any of the practices that we offer here help by building resilience on a farm or ranch? Do they help with moisture retention or drought?
Yeah, so if we look at farm ground and tillage management there, the soil structure that we have, there's a lot of degradation going on between tillage and heavy tillage. What we have seen through numerous studies and verified is if we can reduce tillage, we're not only building soil structure, but building organic matter as well. So the pores within our soil, they're getting better, so we're able to hold on to water. Water retention is crucial for sustainability and good crop production. And on the organic matter side, we know that if we can build even 1% of organic matter, that increases our water holding capacity about 25,000 gallons per acre. Um, where a lot of guys ask, how can I increase water holding capacity, or we're in a drought, what can we do better here? Let's try to, increase your organic matter whatever way we can. And then who doesn't want to have 25,000 extra gallons of water?
All right, great. Thanks. Is there anything else you folks would like to add? Anything that you hear from producers? Anything that is top of mind for you?
So I think one thing that's been really exciting for me, I've been with Agrocarbon for about 2.5 years now, is seeing how the interest in our program continues to grow throughout our region. When I first started here, it was a relatively new idea in this territory, but as time goes on, more and more producers are asking about carbon. They're interested in how they can get involved in the program. And, in just 2.5 short years since I've been around, I mean, we've had a lot of producers enroll in the program across, all 11 states that Mitch and I cover. We have programs going in 32 different states now across the U.S., and a lot of those producers, are coming from the Pacific Northwest, and so that's been really fun to see as I've continued on with Agoro, is the continued interest and growth of this program across the PNW.
In your time here, Jake, can I ask you? You met a whole array and worked with a whole array of farmers and ranchers. Folks that you met on day one, Are you still in contact with them? How does that work? If somebody gets in contact with you through our program, is it a one and done type thing, or are they going to see your face again?
Well, it's really the cool thing about the Agoro Carbon Program. Part of the reason we call it an alliance, it's really a partnership between the producer and Agoro Carbon. So, once they sign up, it's not just, hey, thanks for signing up. We'll see you in 5 years, right? You're really creating a long-term relationship with that producer, both on the enrollment side as well as on the grower success side. We're here for them. Every year, we're going to meet with them and go through their data, check in with them on their project. They're going to call you on a Tuesday afternoon with questions. So, you meet people, you help them enroll, you learn about their operation, and then it creates a long-standing relationship with that producer, which has been really enjoyable for me. And, coming from Oregon, I've also enjoyed just kind of getting to see what else ag is like across the different states that we deal with. I mean, there are some similarities, some differences, but been really fun for me to meet people from across the West and learn about their operations and figure out how we can help them as they continue on.
Great. Love to hear it. Thanks, Jake. And that's a wrap. Thanks for joining Agoro Carbon Alliance's Ag Carbon Podcast. Want to hear more about regenerative agriculture, carbon markets, and more? Head on over to Agoro Carbon Alliance's Knowledge Hub on agorocarbonalliance.com.